Ever since the Avatar Aang movie leaked several months ago, I have seen a range of reviews that go from "This is the peak of Avatar" to "I cannot believe this movie shot my dog." After giving it a go in order to form my own opinion, I have a pretty straightforward verdict.
Damn, that is pretty good!
However, you most certainly caught notice of the thumbnail, and it wasn't a lie. Despite my enjoyment, I also felt a profound sense of disappointment. And you know what? My disappointment is not on the movie, it's on me. I think it's me and anyone else who understands that The Last Airbender is genuinely a 10 out of 10 show. Or if you're a stickler who thinks nothing can be perfect, then it's a 9.8 out of 10. Due to this belief, we treasure this series and desire for anything else created in its image to be just as perfect, leading many post cartoon creations to be overly hated despite not being all that bad. The Legend of Korra as an overall series is a 7 out of 10, 8.5 if you exclude Season 2 and the giant mech in Season 4. The comics are admittedly lacking, but they do have some great moments, and almost all of the novels regarding past avatars are really good. Apparently, there was some movie before the 2026 release, but I've never heard anything about it, and it might just be my imagination. The Netflix live action is just a poor retelling that seems to not understand what made the original series so awesome. My point is that we are all craving for any Avatar media to be next to perfect, and that's a really tall order. That's where my rating for the Avatar Aang movie comes from. I can acknowledge that this gorgeous, thrilling story about our favorite characters all grown up is a really good movie, while also arguing that there were so many ways to make it better despite my high expectations. So that's where our focus for this video is coming from. I want to, as briefly as I can, go over where the movie went wrong and how just changing this from a movie to a brief episodic series could have rivaled the original cartoon for quality. This video is sponsored by Cabbage Corp.
Cabbages! 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 Cabbage!
Before I dissect the problems the movie had, I feel obligated to mention all of the great things, since I don't want to just be a hater. I did give the movie an 8 out of 10 after all. It goes without saying, but the movie is simply breathtaking. At every turn, no matter what is on the screen, it is art in its purest form. Yeah, it's a style different from the cartoon, but let's be honest, if it looked like the cartoon, there would be far more complaints. It has grown up alongside all of us fans. I could sit here for hours and gush about how beautiful the movie is. And it is just one of a dozen reasons why I cannot believe there wasn't an exclusive theatrical release. If I had watched Avatar Aang on the big screen for my first viewing, my soul may have actually left my body and gone into the eternal wind. I have seen some complaints about the characters looking a little too anime-esque, and while I can see that, it didn't really bother me, especially when you consider how odd the faces were sometimes drawn in the original series. Something about Avatar and noses, man. Regardless, I seriously think no matter what happened in a movie, animation quality this good would automatically qualify as a 6 out of 10. But this movie has more to offer to bump up that rating a few notches, and that mainly revolves around the titular character and his foe, Aang and Taga. Aang's story is so very well done, and a great driving force that keeps the narrative going forward, even when it is clear that Taga is not a great dude. Aang's motivation to bring back the air nomads, no matter what it takes, is something that was actually sort of under the radar in the original series. The only time Aang struggles with the loss of his people in the cartoon are at the very beginning when he finds out, a couple moments in the first book, and then at the very end when he has to figure out a way to end the war without killing Ozai, as it would be a betrayal of everything his people stood for. And I would bet a lot of people didn't exactly pick up on that nuance for killing Ozai, or at least how much it would personally impact Aang. So, for the movie to be entirely about this concept for Aang is such a great idea, which of course brings in Taga. If you thought Zahir was a cool villain, Taga is Zahir, but done way better. Their motivations are different, of course, but while Zahir feels more like a character the writers wanted to be super deep and complex, but wasn't, Taga is that and more. Don't get it twisted, Zahir is a solid villain, but Taga is a straight up improvement, and the perfect foil for Aang's story. On top of all of that, the world building that is introduced in the movie fits so naturally into what we already understand. The Lion Turtle Graveyard was such a mature addition that I was stunned when they were doing things like fighting on the top of the teeth. Seeing more past avatars was neat, especially with how they chose to visualize it, and learning more about ancient airbending techniques progressed the magic system in a way that made sense. This movie was spectacular, no doubt about it. But now it is time we moved on to the stuff that held it back.
Oh my god!
The first thing that stuck out to me was how lightning fast the pace was. Now, it did have its moments to slow down, and honestly, those were some of the best parts. But for most of the time, it felt like the writers were hell-bent on keeping the movie under 90 minutes, with how often things breezed by. This is kind of excusable when you get to the finale, since the action being non-stop is a good thing. But sometimes it felt like the pace was intentional in order to not let the audience think too deeply about some of the flaws. For example, you don't really get to ponder on the machinations of the entire gang getting killed, besides Katara somehow, even though she probably also should have been killed by the air bullet. Even if she did somehow manage to block what seemed to be a piercing projectile that straight up passes through people, the breakneck pace also helps conceal the batshit craziness that is her ability to revive all of the dead characters. Like, Jesus Christ, I cannot believe how none of the characters weren't more blown away at it. Yeah, she does it in the original show, and they use the excuse of the spirit water again, but like, you gotta be careful about how you introduce these concepts into the world building. Overanalyzing Avatar, which is a really great channel and you should check him out, points out how certain bending moves have to be handled carefully in the writing. Because if you have something that just auto wins battles, you start to ask the question of why doesn't every bender just do that move?
Yeah, see, I think this is a giant misstep from whoever choreographed this. I know we need this moment to build to Aang going crazy, but it leaves the question in the viewer's mind of why can't every earthbender just do this and win automatically? It's similar to the Paku thing from last season, except this one is super focused on. I think it's a bad play from the writers.
If spirit water can be used by a good healer to revive the dead, it begs the question of why we don't see this more often in the world of Avatar. Yeah, you could argue about spirit water being in short supply, but there's clearly plenty of it in this pool alone, and it's not like it consumes the water. Hell, now that the spirit portals are open in The Legend of Korra, there is infinite spirit water to be accessed. Maybe that's why the world ended, I don't know. I'm really harping on this specific moment, but it just feels like an insane thing to write, when you could have just had Taga spare the group, which he could use to convince Aang he isn't so bad, only to resort to killing Aang only once it was clear he wouldn't go along with him. Then Katara can revive only Aang, and then play off the whole resurrecting the dead with the Avatar, blah blah blah, whatever. Returning to the fast pace, it also covers up how weak the Avatar state is, which was another huge gripe I had with the movie. I can excuse the first fight, as Aang trying to remain in his pacifist ways. But the fight in the Lion Turtle Sanctuary really did the Avatar state dirty. And yeah, I just mentioned how having automatic win buttons can reduce a fight's quality, but that is literally the whole point of the Avatar state, and it really cheapens the impact it's supposed to have. Especially when it's used again in the finale, where it actually works this time to its full effect. I don't have too much to say here yet, outside of again mentioning that the quickness of the story endeavors to smooth over these rough edges. But you know what can't be smoothed over? The lack of our beloved side characters getting to do anything. To get it out of the way, the only voice acting I was disappointed with was Zuko's. Like the animation being slightly different, you kind of adjust to the differences a few minutes into the movie. However, Dante Bosco has such an iconic voice for such a famous character that him being replaced with Steven Yeun hurt my soul. Steven Yeun isn't bad. I loved him in Invincible. The scene with all the Mark variants is proof enough he is amazing. But I'm someone who gets fatigued from hearing the same voice across so many medias. And again, Zuko's voice was iconic. And yeah, the creators said they wanted to get new voice actors for the proper representation of Asian and indigenous cultures, but I feel like that argument somewhat falters when you remember they're literally changing the official language in the world of Avatar from Chinese to their own made-up language. And it's called Avatarian.
Damn, that is pretty ass!
But this is small potatoes, compared to how little these characters even exist in the story. Katara's role worked fine. She has enough to do with her being suspicious of Taga and reluctantly supporting Aang despite her challenging him on occasion. Toph was also okay. She still is the big-headed powerhouse that we all loved, even if her only other contribution was lusting over Taga, which was cute. Sokka, on the other hand, was royally screwed over. Instead of being the steadfast leader of the group that can occasionally be relied upon for some quick thinking and witty banter, he was reduced to comic relief. And, he was not funny a single time. Which is fine, a movie can be great without even a single funny joke, but the writers clearly were desperate for him to make the audience laugh, that it actually started to hurt. You know what made me laugh the most in the entire movie? After Aang gets killed and he joined Sonam in the spirit world, she says, "Who has fallen into the same shame as to join me in my sorrow?" And after Aang explains in a short sentence, her demeanor completely shifts, and she goes, "What have you done?" I had to pause from bursting out laughing, because that genuinely caught me off guard. Which is even funnier, because the reveal that Katara can raise the dead would happen 5 minutes later, which also made me pause again. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Sokka's character sucked. Why didn't he take control of the situation when the airship was going down? Him knowing how to fly it could have been a cool callback to him being partially responsible for their existence. And having him be a leader in that moment would have been way stronger than Zuko. Then again, if that did happen, then Zuko would have contributed almost nothing at all, since Sokka does get his moment to shine with that frankly silly flying bicycle bit. Oh yeah, did you know Zuko was in the movie? I don't understand why people were complaining that Suki wasn't there, when Zuko was almost just as absent. I think he and Aang shared like 2 lines of dialogue to just one another the entire time, which is kind of bonkers to me. The reason why The Last Airbender is so special to people is because of the characters, which is further shown by how much The Legend of Korra suffers from only having like 2 interesting characters every season. Speaking of, it is hilarious to think that The Legend of Korra comes out looking worse after this movie. As if season 2 wasn't bad enough, this movie is basically that again, but done correctly. If Aang had told Korra about being able to get into the spirit world via ocean spirit, that would have solved half her problems instantly. Not to mention, so much stuff goes down in the movie that you would think it would get brought up even like once, but nope. Obviously, with it being written well before the movie, it makes sense why these things like Republic City near being crushed, or the fact that there were other airbenders for a brief amount of time go unmentioned. But still, it's about the implication.
Mike!
I don't want to keep complaining, so the rest of this video is going to be about why a 7 to 8 episode short series would have been way better instead of a 90-minute rush fest. Now, to be clear, I understand that it would have required more animation and time and yada yada capitalism. I'm assuming that in the best case scenario possible, to tell this story of Avatar Aang, this is how I believe it could have been done way better, and why. First, having more time would give our beloved side characters the attention they deserve, and even give them some more development post-cartoon. You can spend the whole first episode showing where everyone is at in a more detailed fashion, and include missing characters like Suki. Now, a big issue I see raised about having more time for our characters, something even overanalyzing mentioned, is that our characters are overpowered. Toph, as she rightfully claims, is the greatest earthbender in the world. Katara is clearly the best waterbender of her generation. Zuko is a damned good firebender. Sokka a tactical genius. And Aang obviously has the Avatar state, which in of itself should be an automatic win. They get around this in the movie by having the characters fight in an impossible storm, and then get their ass beat by airbenders who are frankly way too good at it for having just received the power. My solution is actually to do what the movie did, but flesh it out in a way that feels right, rather than cheap. Katara, Toph, and Zuko are all prodigies, no doubt about that, but only in fighting against water, earth, and fire. Learning how to tango with the element they have never fought before is the perfect way to not need a super powerful foe to challenge them. And yes, I am aware Zuko and Toph did briefly fight against Aang on occasion, but Aang was never trying to kill them like the Denied would be. This could also provide a great character arc for Toph, since in the show, she didn't really get as big of a one as the rest of the cast. As we saw in the cartoon, airbending is her natural weakness, and if she got demolished by an airbender early in the short series, her confidence could be shaken, and she could secretly be rattled by it. Over the miniseries, she could learn to adapt to fighting airbending. And even if she could never be as good against it as other elements, she could come to understand it is okay to have a weakness. Hell, slip in a solo journey with Zuko to round out that missing storyline as well. While we're on the subject of giving our heroes proper places in the story, I have thoughts for other character arcs as well. Katara's seems like an alley-oop. Give her a boatload of pressure to be the mother of the next generation of airbenders. Now, this would have to be handled tactfully, as you don't want to compromise the PG rating, and you definitely don't want to reduce her to being a baby breeder to pump out new airbenders. Save that for The Legend of Korra. However, you can take this concept and tweak it to create something very powerful. Have the first episode of the series start with Bumi and Kaya already born, and with Katara unsure if she wants to have any more kids. Focus the conflict on her wanting to do more in her life than just parent a bunch of kids in the hopes that one might be an airbender, which is a continuation of her breaking gender norms that was so potent in the original cartoon. This could be amplified by Taga, who stands as a more traditional / conservative voice, and doesn't understand why Katara wouldn't be happy to be a mother to the next generation of airbenders, driving a wedge between her and Aang. Here we have the perfect excuse for Aang to be even more desperate to get the staff, despite Taga's old-timey beliefs and somewhat suspicious actions. And of course, the resolution is, at the end of the series, Katara finds out she's pregnant, with an airbender no less, making her and Aang agree this will be their final child, so she can continue to be a peace ambassador in Republic City, as well as a mother at the same time. Side note, Suki could take up the mantle of babysitter for Bumi and Kaya while our heroes go on their adventure, which sounds like reducing her to a sexist role, but it's actually because the Denied want to kidnap the children. A great C-plot over the course of the episodes could include other characters like Ty Lee, May, and any others the writers want to bring back to keep the children safe. That all leaves Zuko. I have to admit this was the hardest to come up with some sort of character arc, but I think I came up with something good. Make Zuko struggle against fighting the airbenders, not because he isn't already practiced with Aang, but because the idea that he might be mirroring his grandfather Sozin in once again wiping out a nation of bending really screwing with his head. The start of the series would be him wholeheartedly supporting Aang to right his nation's wrongs, only to come to this crossroads when Taga betrays them. It would ultimately end with his story intertwining with Aang's, that being the acknowledgement that the air nomads are already gone, and bringing them back with the staff isn't worth the chaos it's creating. You could also mix the story with that one girl whose name I forget, but gets like the lamest redemption story in the movie. That would work as well. Alternatively, you could craft Zuko's story around the death of Iroh, and how he feels lost without his guidance. I say this as an offhand idea because I don't exactly know how to intertwine it with the main story, and there's a risk of doing it wrong, which could be quite harmful to the legacy of these characters. Moving on. Oh, wait, I almost forgot Sokka. I kid you not, I would give him airbending for the duration of the show until the staff gets destroyed. Make Taga accidentally hit him with it during their battle when he betrays them. This serves two purposes. The first is that it allows the creation of a mirrored plot, where Taga is teaching the Denied his twisted version of airbending. Giving this the proper screen time it deserves would explain why the Denied became so cracked at airbending, and why it was so lethal because they're doing it with lethal intent, unlike the air nomads. This would also provide a contrasting storyline with Aang teaching Sokka the way he knows, and that version coming out on top when a confrontation happens. This also provides more insight into the best part of the magic system, the martial arts and discipline needed in order to use your element. The audience could clearly see how Aang's understanding of airbending clashes with Taga's, which that alone is a tantalizing storyline. The second function for Sokka being an airbender is to have the show end with him not liking himself as a bender, and being glad to be rid of it, even if he found ways to make his fighting style even better as a result. Separately, as a fun callback, the writers could make him and Aang play airball again, only for Sokka to kick his ass, even if it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Let's go back to the challenge of giving the Avatar state a fair fight that doesn't just result in nerfing it. My idea is simple, and one I thought they would actually go with in the movie. Make it so Aang's access to the Avatar state greatly strains his body and spirit. It is already in the lore that Aang's hundreds of years of using the Avatar state to remain in ice played into such a young death for an Avatar. So why not take this idea and use it to explain why his Avatar state is weaker? It could both explain why he is hesitant to use it, and why Taga is able to beat him in it. Furthermore, when it comes to the finale, when Aang wrests control of the staff, it amplifies his avatar state to overcome Taga, but at the further cost of him guaranteed to die young. Like the Katara pregnancy thing, this would have to be handled with care, but I'm sure a conversation with Roku could help Aang understand his situation and come to terms with it. If you make that conversation happen early, it could fuel Aang's desperation to revive the air nomads before his early death. Last but not least, having the movie be a short series of episodes instead could help set up the world for the Legend of Korra. Some bits would be minor references, but others could be the seeds that grow into Korra's conflicts later. A very critical example would be to better explain how people were given airbending after the events of Korra Season 2 with the harmonic convergence. If I had it my way with my other suggestions, Aang and Katara could have expected Bumi to be an airbender because he has some sort of dormant spirit or chi within him that for some reason didn't actually manifest into bending. When Aang destroys the staff at the end of the story, it could cause a great spiritual shockwave that buries itself in random individuals all over the Earth Kingdom, with the same sleeping power that Bumi possesses, all of whom would later become airbenders after harmonic convergence. Another setup that would quell a lot of disdain for the Legend of Korra would be to give some reasons as to why the White Lotus was ordered by Aang to be protectors of the Avatar and their declining state. Maybe it's another decision when he finds out he's going to die young. Maybe it's something else. But anything better to demonstrate how the Red Lotus came to be. I'm realizing now that there's so many little tidbits that could be done here. Like a short plot where Zuko is teaching other firebenders about the secrets of lightning to explain how it became so widespread in the Legend of Korra. And yeah, I know he doesn't actually know how to do it, but he did learn how it's done from Iroh, even if he can't do it himself. Plus, I really don't want to have to bring Azula into the conversation, given how controversial her whole story is. There's several other ideas I have on the topic of bridging the Aang story into Legend of Korra, but I think it's time to wrap things up.
You're gonna pay for this!
Any media created in the image of Avatar: The Last Airbender is almost guaranteed to be disappointing. To take something that was perfect and try to expand upon it is always going to be a tall order, and I don't think that's an unreasonable position. Hence my disappointment at the few, yet notable flaws the movie possessed. However, it is really important to check our biases and not be blinded by nostalgia when being graced with new content decades after the original series aired. Avatar Aang was a fantastic movie, and truth be told, it is the best Avatar content that we have gotten ever since The Last Airbender, at least in my opinion. Maybe Korra Season 3 is close, but I still think Taga is a better villain than Zahir. And the fact that I can't name the other Red Lotus members is a pretty bad sign for their villainy. Besides Pali, for reasons. I am looking forward to Seven Havens, as despite my concerns, I think if they can stick the landing, we may be in store for an even brighter future for the world of Avatar. And hey, maybe we'll finally get a half-decent video game as well.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Actually, I'm almost done editing this. I forgot about the fighting game that just came out, which is actually pretty cool, I've heard, and I've seen some of it, but unfortunately, I have like zero interest in fighting games. But still, that's something. Thanks for watching. If you have yet to see the movie, please go watch it. The visuals alone make it worth it, and there's plenty more to enjoy as well. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments, and if you have any better ideas for how an episodic format could have told the story better, let me know that as well. But until next time, wait, silly me, I almost forgot something. Paramount, you can eat a bag of dick.